So after Undertones, I kept playing shows and I kept writing songs, and about a year later I wanted to make another record, and I'd saved up a little bit of money, and I had plans on going back to higher ground in Oxford and recording at the same place and doing sort of the same thing I did with Undertones. And a few days before the session, I got a call from John, and he said that the session players that were going to play with me didn't like my material. They didn't think it was Christian, and they didn't want to record. So all of a sudden I was scrambling to try to find a place to record, and I remembered this guy who played piano with my dad when I was a little kid, Lee, and Dad had always told me that he had a studio in Maysville, and I hadn't seen him since I was, knee-high to a grasshopper. And I looked in the phone book, found his number, and called him up.
He called me and, asked me if he could come by. It was actually kind of funny hearing his voice. He was all grown up at that point,
And was like, hey, I need a studio to record at. I don't have much money, but what do you think? You want to meet up? So the next day I drove up here to Maysville.
We cut the record with all the live players that we used. We probably did it in like a day, maybe mixed it in a day or something like that. It wasn't very long at all.
Where I spent like $800 to make Undertones, I ended up spending about $2,000 to make In the Mood, which is still just a tiny, tiny little budget. But it did allow me to add instrumentation. A friend of mine named Jason Kinney, who was just right out of high school at the time, and he was a great bluegrass guitar player. So he came in on a lot of those tracks and played guitar, and you can hear whisk of Jason Kinney throughout that record.
I'm half a loser, I'm half a winner, I'm half a saint, I'm half a sinner. I feed my soul on Sunday dinner, I'm every man of God.
In the Mood was the first record that I ever tried doing any sort of rapping on, and I was really nervous about it just because it really wasn't being done, especially in acoustic music.
Hell, I'm not rich, don't have a good job, do construction work with this dude named Bob, and he's an ass. Yells at me all the time, pays minimum wage on overtime.
When I was writing songs like Drinking Again and It's Over, I discovered that you could fit a lot of information into like a rap bridge. It was a really effective way of tying the song together and sort of rounding out the picture.
One broken bottle and one broken man, drenched in a bourbon perfume.
The wreckage blew me away. It still does to this day. I just love that song.
I remember the day that I wrote the wreckage. I had a chord progression, but I didn't have a melody for the chorus. And I was working on the song and laid down and took a nap on the couch in the living room, and I had this dream, and I heard the chorus in the dream. Feel like I'm going down with the wreckage. And I woke up from the dream, and I was like, that's it. And I picked up the guitar, and I wrote the rest of the song.
And I've been to Jesus time and time again, Lord, I just can't keep the devil at bay. To feel like I'm going down with the wreckage.
I remember our garage being full of all the boxes of all the CDs coming in. I sold a lot of CDs just mail order off of the website, and my wife would help me out. She would, whenever we got orders, it would come through an email, and she would package the stuff. We'd write the address on there and mail them, and we just got busier and busier doing that. Thankfully, we sold so many copies of In the Mood within that first 6 months to a year. I was able to go back in the following year and then have twice as much money to use to make the next record.
Oh, don't let me go down with the wreckage.
I think a good record should document a certain point in time in an artist's life. And when I go back and listen to In the Mood now, I realize that I did that, despite all the things that I might do differently now. Now that I have the resources, and despite the little flaws I hear, it still conjures up the emotions that I went through, in that time period. And I'm glad that it was made the way it was, and I think it'll always be special because it was the time when the studio opened up to this place of limitless possibility, and I knew that I was going to be spending a large portion of my life figuring out how to work in that environment and continue making better and better records.
feel like I'm going down with a wreckage, trapped in this old flesh and bone. Father, I pray I'll